Episode 62, one of Hollywood's top professional stuntmen, Colin Follenweider. Welcome to The Art of Excellence, a show about people doing extraordinary things in their lives. I'm your host, Glenn Zweig. Thanks for joining me. My guest today is Colin Follenweider. Colin is one of the top professional stuntmen in Hollywood. He has performed stunts in Spider-Man, Transformers, Iron Man, X-Men, Captain America, Avatar, James Bond, and Die Hard, and many others. He has 86 total stunt credits to his name. Colin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited about it.
So I know you were a gymnast in school.
Yes.
Forgive my being a little bit blunt here, but I'm assuming the popular kids are playing football or in the basketball squad. So what kind of kid were you? How did you get into gymnastics?
My parents were both fairly athletic. I have two older brothers and a younger sister. And we grew up playing a bunch of different sports. Like I did track, I did baseball, I did everything at school. And my parents kept on saying, hey, why don't you give gymnastics a try? I think they just saw how I was naturally. My friend and I, we had a daredevil club. We climbed trees and jump off of roofs. And my sister was actually in gymnastics. And they're like, hey, why don't you go take a look at that? And I'm like, no, I'm doing all this other stuff. But one day, and I was 12, and it's actually like, you know how your life's headed one direction? And I went into open workout with my sister and at the gymnastics gym. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this is what I should be doing. And then I kind of stopped every other sport and then just started up gymnastics when I was 12, which is a little late, but it was really the right thing for me. So it's just from a push from my parents.
Was it just something to stay in shape, or were you trying to get to the point where you could actually maybe like get to the Olympics one day?
We have goals in our lives that, you write something down, like that's a goal. But I really kind of like heading a direction. Like I don't always know what the end result would be, but I just knew at that moment, I'm like, this is the direction I need to head. Obviously there is a dream about going to the Olympics, but I was like an average plus gymnast. Like I wasn't horrible, but I definitely wasn't really Olympic bound. I just really enjoyed doing it. And then so I just continued to do it. And through that, I ended up being a walk-on at San Jose State at their gymnastics team and did that for a couple years before I quit to walk another path. And I was a ski bum for like a year.
Yeah, I wish I could have been a ski bum. So speaking of goals, was being a stuntman as a career even on your radar at the time? Like, was that something you had ever set your sights on early on?
In high school, I actually thought about being a stuntman. Like you kind of hear, I grew up in Colorado and obviously watched movies and television. And like one of my favorite TV shows was Miami Vice. Not one, it actually was. It was my favorite TV show with Don Johnson and Philip Michael Thomas.
Sure.
And I just love the action in it. And, you hear about stuntman stuff. So I'm like, oh, that'd be awesome. But there's no like road, there's no avenue towards being a stuntman in Colorado. But I will tell you, like I used to live in the basement of my house, my parents' house, and it was carpeted stairs. And I would just practice falling down these stairs just for fun. This is in high school. And a friend of mine heard that I did this. And he's like, why don't you do it in school? I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna do it. And he kept pushing, and I'm like, all right, in between 6th and 7th period next Thursday, in the science wing. And there was stairs. There's like 5 stairs, not like, I know exactly how many stairs there were. There was 5 stairs. There was a landing and a wall. Then you turn the corner and then 19 more stairs down the other way. And he told some people. And so in between classes, I show up at those stairs and there's people lined up to see me fall down these stairs. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm not backing out now. And so I start to go down the stairs. I trip on the first 5 and I slam into the wall and books in my face and I stumble backwards and then turn around and tumble down the other 19. at one point my 3-ring binder opened up and there's papers flying and tumbling down, and got all the way to the bottom, and stood up and people clapped and grabbed my books and went over to class. So I think I always had a goal of it, because I always thought this would be really cool, but it wasn't until later on is when I actually started actively pursuing it.
Now, I don't even know where to start here. I mean, just to rewind, I think I heard the words, I would practice falling down the stairs for fun.
Yeah.
Now, Colin, that's not normal, right? I mean,
Yeah, I know.
You left school early to go to Cirque du Soleil.
Yes.
Which, my God, I mean, that's got to be just the most coveted job in the world for doing this sort of thing. What was the role that you had? Which of the plays were you in, or the circuses? And what was that like being part of that show?
Just to kind of get a little background on Cirque du Soleil, for me, I saw them when I was in college, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I'd love to be a part of, because I did enjoy the performance aspect. And so like being an audience member and just feeling the magic and how they just do things differently, and the imagery that they have as well as the acrobatics was so inspiring to me. So when I had an opportunity to pursue it, went and tried out, and then got hired by Cirque du Soleil. I did at the Bellagio in Las Vegas for 3 years. They have different classifications of artists. There's the house troupe artists, and then there's like the specialty or the dancers, and then the musicians. I was part of one of the house troupe acts, where you have a bunch of people doing an act, as opposed to a specialty artist when you have like one or two. Yeah, so I was at I did one of there's called Comets. There's these guys running around in gray wigs and red coats, and we kind of guide the audience through the show. Did that, did an acrobatic section of it. Did a high diving section, 62 feet into water. Oh, for those of you guys who do not know, it's a water show, and they have lifts in the water that go up and down. So it could be a dry stage, or it could be 17 feet deep. And at one point in the show, we jump out of the rafters, which is 62 feet, down into the water. So yeah, it was like an acrobat, like house troupe ensemble acrobat.
62 feet.
Yeah, that's not my highest. So I started.
Of course not. Of course not.
Of course not.
Well, what's your highest?
I started doing high diving shows at theme parks, and I used to do 82 feet into a 12-foot tank at Six Flags Great America in Chicago, and at Water Country USA in Virginia. Yeah, 62 feet into a 12-foot tank.
So I'm guessing this isn't going to be the first time I say this on this interview, but that sounds really dangerous.
Well, you start low and you work your way up.
My God. So you're performing in Cirque. Colin, how do you go from Cirque to Hollywood stuntman? And in fact, how do you even apply for a job as a stuntman? Because it's not like you're an actor where you read a script against someone else. I mean, how do you show them that you have what it takes to do what you need to do in one of those movies?
I would say, again, I kind of start heading in a direction, and then you figure out how to do it. So to backtrack a little bit, I did a stunt training workshop when I was 19 in Seattle. And it was a 3-week intensive. This is kind of like what I was saying earlier, like in Colorado, there was no avenue. And I found this workshop, and I'm like, oh, that's the way to get into it. And in this workshop, where I had no experience in any of this, we learned how to do fights, because 80% of stunt work is fighting and falling down. We did sword work. We did fire burns. We learned how to slide a car around. We did some ratchets, which is an air piston that just kind of like a shotgun blast, and someone just like pulled back into a wall, called a ratchet on a wire. So it was like this really stunts 101. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. But now what? And then so after that, I did a couple live stunt shows that I auditioned for, then Cirque du Soleil. And for me, Cirque du Soleil was, at that point, I had done 9 years of live performing. And it was just like a culmination of everything that I had done until then. However, I'm like, you know what? I still have this dream to be a Hollywood stuntman. So through contacts that I've met, And leaving Cirque, I came down to LA and just started pursuing it. I worked with a guy once who had a tattoo on his wrist, and it said action, inspiration. And I said, isn't that backwards? Shouldn't it be the other way? It's like, shouldn't it be inspiration and then action? And he's like, nah, because what happens is if you always wait for inspiration, you're going to keep waiting. But if you start doing something, then you get inspired how to do it. So that's kind of what worked for me, where I just started trying to pursue stunt work. And then from that, I found out how to do it. And basically, it was just like a continual drive to keep training, to keep bettering yourselves. It's such a networking business. Like you were saying, like as a actor, it's equally as difficult to become an actor as it is a stuntman, but it's a different avenue. Whereas an actor, you're able to go in and read a line or read a script and play a part, and then you get cast from that. Where stunt work, you have that a little bit, but most of it is just not who you know, but who knows you. And when a coordinator is looking at a script or doing the breakdown, they're like, okay, who would be good for this role? Who's the right size for this? Who has got these talents? And it's really about networking, and then hopefully your reputation kind of carries on and helps you get other jobs. We call it hustling, where you just find out where productions are being filmed and you just go try to meet the coordinator. We'll have to see how that goes with once the production business or once the showbiz business starts back up, to see how new people are going to be able to pursue and get in touch with coordinators with the COVID issues and stuff.
Yeah. You mentioned talent. And so I was curious, do stunt people tend to specialize in a particular niche, or is it important to be well-rounded? In other words, are there like car crash experts, jumping out of building specialists, fight scene gurus, or do you tend to be a jack of all trades?
There's a need for both. There's definitely a need for both. And your way in will probably change throughout your career. Like I was a gymnast, so being an acrobat or like a wire specialist would be like my strong point, my way in. Then you'll have car people or like motocross people, and that'll be their way in. Or you have martial arts people, and then that's their way in. But once you get inside the business, there's like an expected baseline of skills that are necessary to have. Like if it's a straight up martial arts movie or film, where like a bunch of flipping and twisting and stuff like that, I'm not the guy to call. But I can do kind of Hollywood foo a little bit. I can make myself look like I've had a lot of training, as well as like a rodeo guy come in. But then he's probably going to become he still needs to know how to fight and fall down. Because like I said earlier, like 80% of stunt work is fighting and falling down. So if you come in with a specialty and you stick to just that specialty, you may get those jobs, but you're also going to limit yourself to just be doing that. Like I'm good as a jack of all, kind of master of none kind of thing. Most stunt coordinators, when they hire people, there's a baseline of expected skills to have.
Well, you mentioned fighting and falling down. I don't want to do the fighting part, but could I get a gig just for the falling down? like just let the punch roll and then just bring in Glenn and just fall down.
Yeah, you can. I mean, you can always do that, and
you'll set me up. Okay,
I'll set you up, and maybe we'll do a stair fall, but we can pad the stairs, so you'll be fine. We'll put some elbow pads on you. It'll be great. Just let gravity do all the work, and you'll be good.
So, Colin, you have probably been in more blockbusters than any other stuntman. Certainly, equal to anyone else. Spider-Man, Transformers, Iron Man, X-Men, Captain America, Avatar, James Bond, Die Hard. I could keep going and going. I think I saw 86 stunt credits to your name, and I'll bet that's not even necessarily updated. So are you able to do things that others can't do or can't do as well? Or do you just develop such a great reputation and then everyone just wants to use you? And you don't have to be modest here. I'm asking the question. I mean, seriously, right? Because you mentioned that 3-week course you had. I mean, how many, over the years, thousands and thousands and thousands of people have gone through courses like that? And what percent of those people are actually able to make a really nice living as a stuntman, professionally, right? It's a minuscule fraction of those. So give me some insight. How do you, have a career like this?
Thank you, by the way. I appreciate your comments. I would say the thing that works for me is that since I am a jack of all as opposed to master of none, that it gives me a wider variety of employment possibilities. And then beyond that, beyond just the being like a straight up performer stuntman, I'm also a pretty good stunt rigger as well, which also gives me other opportunities to get employment. And there's you we hear this a lot in the business that if you got to spend 12 hours, 14, 16 hours a day with someone, you'd rather have someone that you enjoy being around who may be a little bit less talented as opposed to like that top of the line person who is really talented and really amazing, but man, you just don't want to be around them.
Because high maintenance?
Yeah, because you're spending so much time together that it's a much more enjoyable work atmosphere when you're with people that you like.
Hmm.
So I think for me, since I feel like I'm a pretty nice guy, I get along with most everyone. That has really helped my career, and that I'm easy to get along with, and that I'm a hard worker, and that I can do. I may not be the best at everything, but I can do a lot of other things, and I can still get the job done. But I really think like all those things together has really helped my career, being easygoing, willing to put in the hard work. I'll help anyone out, I'll do whatever I can, and I think just that enthusiasm really shines through, and because of that, I guess that's why people seem to want to keep hiring me.
Hmm.
Did that answer the
Yeah,
question?
of course. Of course. I can see you being well liked and easy to get along with.
Thank you.
You've doubled for a number of A-list celebrities: Bruce Willis, Daniel Craig, Tobey Maguire, Kevin Bacon. Again, just to name a few. I was curious if there was much of a relationship between the actor and the stunt double. I mean, do you spend a lot of time with those actors? Is it important to have a bond with them?
Yes, it is important to have a bond, but for me, it's important to, because it's a workplace, because it's a professional environment. I really like having a professional bond with actors that I'm doubling because they need to trust you. Whereas, like, say you're putting an actor in a situation that's potentially dangerous, obviously not really dangerous because otherwise I'd be doing it, but you need to be able to convey to them, like, hey, this is what's happening here, this is what's happening here, this is where you do this bit of fighting, then you run over there and you're going to fall down there. Would you like some pads? We should put elbow pads on you or knee pads, and so it is important that we have open communication between us, that I can tell them this is what's happening, and then they can tell me, I'm not quite comfortable with that. Can we change it? And so it is important. We spend, depending on the movie, we'll spend a lot of time with someone or not a lot of time with someone. I mean, it just really depends. But like I said, it's and of course, it's again, it's that nice, friendly, comforting conversation that I would want, that the people that I double are able, that they feel that they can rely on me. So I do what I can to facilitate that kind of relationship,
Mm.
as opposed to like some people are, they'll become your friends. But for me, like, my job first is to make sure that they are safe and comfortable and understand the situation.
I mean, this is probably going to sound hokey, but when you're taking on a stunt, are you just thinking in terms of the details of the stunt that have to happen, or are you trying to somehow take on the identity of, okay, I'm Spider-Man. How would Spider-Man behave? Or let me just take on that identity because it'll give you extra confidence or swagger or something like that. Or is it just literally just like you're just doing a stunt, and since it's a non-speaking part, the character doesn't matter all that much?
It doesn't sound hokey at all. That's a really good question, because what I feel separates great stunt people from good stunt people is the ability to take on the character, because we should be actors, as in we are storytellers. And so if I am doubling someone, say like Spidey, and I just stick to the technical side of the stunt, then for the audience, it ruins the illusion for the audience member. So when I'm doubling someone, I try to pick up something of how they move, or how they hold their body, or how they walk, or how they stand, because what that does is then it's more seamless in between the actor and then me doubling them. So it's important. It's
Hmm.
imperative for stunt people to be able to act like the people that they're doubling, and to be able to continue to carry the scene. So yes, there's definitely the technical side of a stunt. But like I said, we are storytellers as well. So you have to be able to combine them effectively to help facilitate the story. Otherwise, we're just doing like YouTube videos. Like, hey, check out this cool stunt. Check out this cool stunt. It's like, no, we need to be actors.
So, well, you mentioned that you're given the actors often advice in terms of how to perform certain low risk stunts.
Mm-hmm.
Are they giving you advice in turn in terms of how to take on the role?
Totally. I doubled Jude Law in Captain Marvel, and he had these, like, we call them gravity gauntlets, and that he's able to, like, and they open up, and then he's able to, like, hold things by gravity, or like pick them up and then like throw them aside. And so when we're trying to figure out, say, because he fights with those too. So how does he want to do that? Like, how does he want to? We had a discussion, like, okay, Jude, like, so this is this. What? How do you want to activate them? Or it's like, maybe we, kind of figured out. And he was, saying like, well, maybe we kind of worked through it. And he's like, yeah, I'd like to do it like this and this. And it's like, okay. It's like, so then I incorporate how he wants to do it into the choreography. So yeah, it is important. Like, definitely, I love getting that feedback, because like I said, my job is to not have the audience know where the switch is. So if there's any input that he's like, hey, I saw, if this has happened too, where I was doing something and the actor I was doubling came up to me, he's like, hey, I saw you kind of doing this. Like, I don't really feel like that is how I want to do the character or how I interpret it, and maybe try something like this. I'm like, oh, that's great. Thank you so much.
And you're like, why don't you get your ass up in the water?
So it's like having that feedback is helps me do a better job. And, like, ultimately, I want to do the best job I can. And so whatever tools, facilitate that is what I would encourage. And so I love that feedback. Definitely.
I love this quote I read of yours. If you're smashing through glass, you're always going to get cut, hurt, banged up. If you get hit by a car, despite the training, you're still getting hit by a car, and that hurts. I love it. So it's not like, I'm guessing you've got tricks to avoid getting hurt. It sounds like sometimes the pain's inevitable. The trick, I guess, is how do you withstand the pain and then just get up and do it again and again?
Um, yes. Well, you're trying to mitigate pain. You are going to get cut if you go through glass. It's just the way it is. And so you'll try to put on protective layers, like in your hands. You can put moleskin, because when you go through, you're going to put your hands down. There's glass on the floor. It's always going to want to cut you. So you're just trying to mitigate the pain. But also, I think we are a little bit sadomasochistic. This happened on Transformers 3, Dark of the Moon, when I was doubling Shia. I have this fight with this military guy, and he tackles me onto the top of a car, and then we go rolling off of it, and now we're down in the concrete, and we're fighting and struggling, and we have clothes on, and I have some pads, but we're still, you're still trying to portray the realism of this fight. And so it's getting rough, and it was fun. It went well. And at the end of the day, when I'm taking off my wardrobe and I'm taking off my pads and I'm starting to look at all the bruises that I have on my body, and I'm like, yes, I did my job,
Like you left it all on the floor.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say that I used to think that this is kind of like a flash in the pan career. Like, you go in, you do it, and you have to get out before you're really injured, or, like, can't do it anymore. But as the longer I do it, the more I realize that this is a career where I want to go to work the next day. Like, so even though you're getting hit by a car, you're still, we do whatever we can in the stunt business to try to negotiate through these dangerous situations, so that everyone is able to go to work the next day. So we do take risks, but we still have safety is like the highest thing on our list, which sounds weird because of what we do, but to have that consciousness, just to not just disregard like, I would just get another stunt man, just throw them in a pack of wolves kind of thing. But no, we really want to look out for each other, and we really want to continue, because this is our life, this is our career. And once you get like seriously injured, obviously that changes. So I would say we're a little sadomasochistic, but also we are conscious of the safety measures and things that we are able to do to get up and go again or go to work the next day. Yeah.
So, I mean, I get you're risking pain, you're risking injury. You try to mitigate the risk as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Are there situations where you feel like you're risking your life as well? Are there some of these stunts that have fatal consequences?
Yeah. It sounds bad when you just say it out like that, because I think for me, it's like, we understand it, but, obviously, and it's important to not disregard the consequences, because they are. Like when we use wires, a lot of the stuff that we use is called Tech 12. It's actually Kevlar based strands that are woven together, and it's actually stronger than cable. However, if it goes over a sharp edge, it can get cut. So when someone's on these lines and they're 60 feet, 80 feet up in the air hanging off of a crane, there's a dire consequence if the stunt or it hasn't been set up right or correctly, or we are in the business of taking risks, and so there's a possibility of having fatal results. But like I was saying earlier, it's like this is why you always want to be able to trust the people that you're working with, because we do have each other's lives in our hands. Like even say when I'm riding a wire, say it's not even that extreme. We're not hanging off a crane 80 feet up. But say you're just doing like you're on the ground and you're doing a jump up like 15 feet, right? Jumping up 15 feet and someone's on the line and you're jumping and you have like this superhero jump, and they jump off a ladder and then you go flying up and you land on this upper platform, and then they're down on the ground and they're, and you don't quite make it, and you start stumbling backwards and off the end, then that person's responsibility is to save you from falling back 15 feet back to the ground. Even in the smaller stunts, and that could be devastating if that person wasn't able to save you, or somehow the rope slipped out and now you're falling 15 feet, you're falling head first, there's trouble there.
Have you ever had any career-ending close calls?
Again, it's kind of not something I like to think about too much, just because the reality of it is a scary reality. I will tell you that if there was a situation that came up and I felt that my chance of success was very minimal or no chance of a success, that I would say no. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not the person for this stunt,
Has that happened? Have you turned down stunts because you just felt like it wasn't worth it?
I have turned down opportunities. Like someone asked me about, at one point, can you ride a horse? Like, yeah, I can ride. It's like, okay, well, we have this gap that you're jumping or over this. And like, yeah, I'm not the person for that. Because in a situation like that, it's like, I don't have that kind of training. You're working with an animal who has its own mind and own personality. And so you need to get a horse person for someone like that. I am not that person. So I have turned down opportunities like that. But there's also been situations when we're trying to figure out how to do it, and some people are throwing in ideas. It's such a collaboration, the whole stunt business, or coming up with the gags and the actual stunts. Someone suggested something, a different way. We could do it like this, we could do it like that, and it's like, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of doing it that way. However, maybe we could do it this way. So we're able to negotiate through this, and I call it like spiraling in. So you have an idea of what you're trying to get to, which is in the center. And you start with all these ideas on the outside, and you just keep coming around, and you keep working it out, and you keep adjusting your ideas, and you're like, okay, well, we could do this. How about we do this? Oh, that didn't work, so let's do it this way. And then you end up spiraling into what the stunt ends up being in the film or television. There was a thing on The Losers. I doubled Jeffrey Dean Morgan on this one stunt in a movie called The Losers with Chris Evans. I actually doubled Chris Evans on it too, and this other guy, Oscar Caneda. Zoe Saldana was in the movie. It's actually a pretty fun movie, but where Jeffrey Dean Morgan is jumping off of one of the shipping cranes that picks up the canisters or off of like the big cargo ships, and it's 150 feet up. And I'm jumping off the end and going head first down into the water. I'm on wires, and we stop before we get into the water because they're going to cut to a different shot of, close up of going into the water. So we set up these cranes, and we have a weight bag test or weight bag that represents my weight. And so you want to test it with a weight bag before you put a person into it. So I'm climbing up the ladder, or I'm climbing up the crane to try to get to the top where the platform I'm jumping off. And while I was doing that, they did a weight bag test, just to make sure everything was going. So I got up there, and they're like, okay, we'll just hook you up and ready to go. And like, we just did the weight bag test. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I need to see it. Is there any way we could do another one just so that I can see it to make sure I feel confident? And they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. So then they just did another weight bag test, and I'm like, okay, system works. If something happens, then we'll deal with it then. But the system works great, so hook me up and let me jump.
Do you ever get nervous before a big stunt? Look, I'm not talking performance anxiety, more like not dying anxiety.
I would say that when you start taking things for granted is when probably the biggest fails happen. As an example, I used to do a trick on trampoline, which is called a double-double. And it's a double backflip with 2 twists. And I was bouncing, I was doing it. I was just bouncing. It's been a while since I've done the trick. And I'm like, maybe I should do a double-double. Like, okay, cool. Like, I should do my timer lead-ups. It's like, nah, I'll be fine because I've done it enough, And then when I threw the trick, I threw it incorrectly. And fortunately, I ended up missing my feet and landing on my head and shoulders and kind of tweaking my neck a little bit.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. But it wasn't too bad. It could have been, but it wasn't. And it's like, I stopped for a second and I'm like, okay, even if you're very confident in something, when you lose your nervousness about it is when you take it for granted and when accidents are more likely to happen. So back to your question, like, yes, I'm nervous when I do things. However, that's what keeps me safe. That's what keeps my mind active. And that's what, so then all of your consciousness is put into, okay, how can I keep this as safe as possible? How can I survive this? And like, even if it's something that you're like, obviously something like, I'm just falling down it, like, on the ground, like maybe I don't need to worry too much about that. But the being nervous is your body's way of putting your focus into something. And it's important to be able to put that aside so then you can perform and do what you need to do. But to completely disregard that, I think is when accidents tend to happen more often. But yes, there's certain things like I was saying, the example with jumping off the crane.
Was that the scariest? What's been the scariest stunt you've ever had to perform?
That one was scary until I was confident in the system. So even though we're 100 feet up, I definitely had that I'm almost too nervous to do this until I saw the weight bag test. And once I was confident in the system, then I was not concerned about it at all.
There's never been a stunt where you've said, I am never going to do that again.
Not that I remember, but I do, get hit in the head a lot, so I forget things.
You mentioned, 80% fighting. I think a lot of these superhero movies or these martial arts kind of fight scenes. Is that one of the skills that you have? Is that something that you got trained for?
Yes. Like I said, I'm more kind of dabble in things. So it's like the fighting aspect of stunt work when I came into the business was definitely my weakest aspect. So from that, I started asking around and like, hey, I need to get better at this. Who do I go to do this? Like, how do I get better at this? And one of the things that people suggested is to go take Taekwondo from Master Simon Rhee, who is just an amazing stunt person, has had such an amazing career. And so I'm like, okay, I will go take from him. And he has a Taekwondo dojo So I went in, I kept training that for a little bit, got to a level where I felt confident. Like I said, I'm not doing like big old flashy kicks, but I felt confident in the style, and then got a job, and I go back and keep training periodically. There was a movie that was really more like, there was the fight style in it was kind of more brutal. So I'm like, okay, I need training in this. Let's see, how about some like Krav Maga? Because that is so, it's so brutal, because you're coming and you're throwing elbows, and you're slamming the person's face on your knee. It's like so I need that fire and that brutality to be able to accurately portray this character in this scene doing this kind of fight style. So I would say I continue to train. There's also sword work that I've done some sword work. I'm not at all a sword master, but you put a sword in my hand, and I know my blocks and in good form doing it. So like I said, I'm not an expert.
But good enough in enough of the trades that you can get these parts. How about parkour? Is that something that's pretty big these days?
It is. There was a time there earlier in my career when it was like the biggest thing going. And then so of course, like being a gymnast, a lot of those skills that parkour artists have are a lot of gymnastic based type stuff. But there's a difference between gymnastic mindset, where you have like the form and the spotting and clean lines, and the parkour really kind of cool flow, off axis tweaky type stuff. So coming from the gymnastics world, I had to adjust my consciousness or my mindset of it, and be okay being sloppy, and also, just because I was a gymnast doesn't mean I'm a good parkour person. Like I needed to go and train. So that was something that I was able to go and train for a bit, and have done a couple parkour stuff since then. But again, if you're looking for like top of the line parkour tricks and stuff like that, like that's not me. I got a good baseline. I can get from here to there. I can jump over that. I can flip off of that. But like anything beyond that, you should get one of the parkour professionals.
So when you're not training for a specific part, you're in between movies, what kind of physical training do you do just to stay in peak shape and to keep your skills up?
It's a good question. Good question. I enjoy being very active. So even though it's not necessarily stunt specific, like I have a road bike, or a mountain bike. I go on road bike rides. I go on mountain bike rides. I'm a skier, so when winter comes, I'm off skiing. I like roller skating a lot too. I grew up roller skating with my dad, and the reason I brought this up is because I have done roller skating in a film. So having these other traits, even though they're not stunt specific, I've been paid to roller skate. I did a commercial where I was a skier, so I've been paid to be a skier. For me, just being active and being an athlete, continuing to do that, affords me more opportunities to actually have work in the stunt business.
Well, I imagine a lot of these stunts are somewhat creatively inspired, for one movie, for one scene. It's not like you can practice swinging around the city so you're prepared for Spider-Man, right? I mean, it's such a wide variety of skills you've got to keep up to do so many different things. Or some of these things just muscle memory that when called in the moment, you just know how to do, 150 different things.
Yeah, it's a good observation because of the variety of stuff that we're asked to perform. I am surprised that I used to have a swing contract with Cirque du Soleil, where if I wasn't working and they needed someone to fill a spot because maybe someone was out due to an injury or something like that, that I was able to go back and do O periodically. When I left there initially in 2002, and then I came back a lot. Sometimes it was like for 2 days, sometimes it was like for 2 months, over a decade after that. But I'm surprised on when I did that show, I did it for 3 years, that coming back, I still was able to retain a lot of those skills. Maybe not like the top level skills, but my body still knew how to do it. So when you have a lot of time and experience in something, then going back to it, it's able to recall those skills pretty readily. I mean, yeah, there's training. And then there is, some things do feel different. And then some things you're like, oh, that's too rusty. I should probably work on that. But the one thing I wanted to say to your comment is I've been fortunate that a lot of my development as a stunt person has been on the job. So I've been able to get a lot of on the job training, and with that continues my skill set, or my bag of tricks that I'm able to reach in there and dust something off and kind of work it and then get it to a performance level. So I've been fortunate in that. Sometimes you get thrown to the wolves, so you like go in and you're like, oh, all right, well, I hope I can do this, but I also think through a lifetime of crashing, like I said, I was an average gymnast. I crashed all the time, and being a skier, I crashed all the time. Or I mentioned roller skating too. It's like you crash. I've fallen down so much in my life, not meaning to, that I feel confident that if I'm thrown into something where I have to fall down, my body knows kind of what to do, and I'll just let it do it.
Hmm.
So I think it just builds. It's like a pyramid or like a mound.
Yeah.
It's like a mound.
Yeah. So, Colin, I'm curious if there are any kind of physical attributes that might make it easier to land roles. So, I was thinking of like one of 1,000 examples, Michael Phelps, and not to take anything away from the guy's athleticism and his drive, but he's 6'4" with a wingspan of 6'7", so he's got this unfair advantage just to start with. If Phelps were my 5'7" height and my wingspan, he'd probably just be a spectator. Anything that you have that you think gives you somewhat of an unfair advantage?
I would say that the average of men is like 5'10" and around like 160, 165. That's kind of where most, I haven't done the research, so don't quote me on actual facts, but I would say the majority of actors are in my category. Like, so what that does is that gives me a lot of opportunities to double a lot of different people within this size. Because as you said, like with Phelps's wingspan and his big flipper feet definitely help him propel quickly through the water. So then for me, being the size that I am gives me a lot more opportunities to double people. So I would say that helps. However, with that being the case, there is the majority, not the majority, but there's a lot of other stunt people that would fit in this category. So what I feel like has been very helpful for me is to have that gymnastics background, where you have a connection with my body, like really good body awareness, where able to adjust the things that need to be adjusted, and through that ability able to get more jobs, to be able to do more things. So I think maybe now that I've spiraled in to what I'm trying to say, I would say the ability to be adjustable is probably not adjustable, to be coached. Like when you're an athlete,
Mm-hmm.
you have a coach and like you're doing something a certain way and your coach says, hey, do it this way. And you need to do it that way, or else you're gonna get in trouble with the coach. So I would say stunt work is a lot like that too. It's like I have a certain level of skills. I have a certain way I want to do something, and to be able to be coachable and to make adjustments, I think is probably the most important attribute as a stunt person. It's like, because you can't just as a simple example, like throwing a punch. It's like you can throw a punch so many different ways. Say if you're in a bar fight, you're going to throw these big old like haymakers, like, like kind of brutish type style. But it's like, so you come into, say, a film that has a little bit of a martial arts feel and you start throwing these kind of punches, the coordinator is going to go like, okay, great. Now make an adjustment and try to keep it a little bit more, Bruce Lee-like, like your quick twitch and you're throwing it out. And so you need to be able to take your skill set and adjust it for the genre of the film or the style of the film. And so I think that is probably what is most important, to be able to make those adjustments. Because if you can't, if you're like, nah, that's not how I do it, then, now you're butting heads with the coordinator. And now the coordinator's like, well, now you're not doing the job I hired you to do. So therefore, you're not going to have a job.
So I'm speaking somewhat out of turn here, but
You know, it's your show. You can speak however you want.
that's right. So, these days with advanced CGI, I think it would almost be obsoleting the need for live stunts because it seems like you can create so many moving images on the screen and it seems pretty realistic. Have you noticed any change in demand for stunt people, or is it pretty much consistent?
I would say that's one of our concerns too, obviously. It's like if you're able to have in the computer world, if you're able to have this volume of movement that you've been able to capture and motion capture and then so now you can put any character over this movement, you're not going to need stunt people anymore. However, I will say that CGI has definitely made our business or my business a lot safer. I was going to use like Avengers, like Endgame as an example. Like there are stunts when people get thrown, through the atmosphere. But when you're doing it, you start with a person and then you kind of end with a person. So there is that middle ground where you don't have to throw someone, 200 feet through the air and capture it all in one, but you start with someone. People know internally whether it's a person or maybe subconsciously or consciously, I'm not sure. It's
Mhm.
so people want to see people doing things. And so I feel, to answer your question, there's always going to be a need for a person interaction. People want to see that. You don't want to just, of course there's animation's great, but like when you're in a live action show, there's got to be some live performance to it. And even though CG has definitely taken a lot of stunts say away from us, however, it has also made our lives safer because now, back to my example, you don't need that person flying 200 feet through the air. They can animate that, but you're still going to start with a person.
When you look back at the career you've had, and I know it's still ongoing, of course,
I hope so. Thank you.
where what kind of role, if any, does serendipity play? Like, were there some big lucky breaks that you had along the way?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, I'm a fan of Eli Manning. This is good. This is going to tie in. Don't worry. I'm a fan of Eli Manning, and I actually think he's a really good quarterback. However, he is able to put himself in situations where luck kind of happens. Like the helmet catch in
Yep.
Super Bowl against the Patriots, like that kind of stuff. Like you can't plan for that. So with that, like I feel that I am lucky enough to be able to put myself into situations that the serendipity does happen, that you are in the right place at the right time. But it just doesn't happen by itself. Like Eli Manning is like, if he wasn't a good quarterback, these situations wouldn't really happen for him. He wouldn't beat the Patriots twice in the Super Bowl. Again, it goes back to walking a direction. It's like I'm walking a direction. I'm doing the things that I need to do to be a successful stunt person. And because of that, creates opportunities that are serendipitous that then create work opportunities. For me, it goes back to action and inspiration. It's like you start doing something, then you get inspired to do something because this door happens here and you walk through that door. But if you never started walking, you would never get to that door.
No, that it makes sense. Makes sense. Colin, you're what, 44, 45 years old today?
45.
45. So how long does a stunt double career last? I assume you're not going to be jumping off of buildings in your 70s, right?
I hope not. One of my first jobs that I got, that I was fortunate enough to get, was I doubled Tobey Maguire, as you mentioned, on Spider-Man 3. And at that point, I was like 30, and my view of the stunt business or a stunt double career, it's a limited span. It's got to be like 10 years. So it's like I need to get it now, and fortunately, things happen, and I was able to start working. One of the other stunt people that I met on that show was 45, and which is the same age I am now, and at that point, he was still one of the best stunt performers in the business, hands down. So from that experience, it made me realize, like, oh, this isn't just, like I mentioned before, like a flash in the pan. Like this is actually a career. Being a stunt performer, I think you can keep doing it for a while. I think it can be an extended career. I mean, you can have there's stunt coordinators and still stunt performers that have been in the business for 30, 40 years and they're still killing it. It goes back to what I was saying about trying to mitigate risks. We're still risking things, but still trying to, have a career and go to work the next day. So it's a longer career than I initially anticipated.
Colin, you've got two daughters, right?
A son and a daughter. My son is 8 and my daughter is 6. Yeah.
Okay. So does having kids change your approach to this profession at all? Does it make you more conservative? Does it make you reflect about taking on certain stunts at all?
I would say that it does. Obviously, of course, I want to be able to be, safe for my kids and come home to my kids and see them and hang out with my wife. I kind of like her. So it does change your perspective a little bit and your priorities. Yes, for sure. Does it mean like I'm not going to do anything dangerous anymore? Well, not really, because I still, this is still my chosen career. This is still the job that I love doing. At times you choose your family. For me, because family first, and like there's any family issue, all right, that's where I got to be. And other times you have to choose your career to be able to provide for the family. This is our job to kind of go to the edge, and we try to go to the edge as safely as possible, but that's still what we're hired to do.
Well, we will end with the question I end every show with. The name of the podcast, The Art of Excellence. When you think of that word excellence, Colin, what does it mean to you?
So I listened to a couple of your podcasts, and so I knew this question was coming. And why is this such a hard question to answer? I don't necessarily think it's need to be the best. It's like there's not one excellence. There's not like one top thing. It's like you do this the best in the world, so you're the only one who can say excellence. But it is just doing something incredibly well. But for me, I think the pursuit of excellence is more important than the accomplishment of saying I'm excellent. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I feel that when I look at stuff that I've done on film, when the movie or television show comes out, I'm usually mildly disappointed in one of three things. One would be how it was filmed, how it was edited, or what I chose to do. And I think being mildly disappointed helps the pursuit of excellence. Because if I was really confident in the last one about my choice, it's like, yes, that was awesome, that was amazing. Sometimes I feel like that, but if I felt like that for everything that I did, then I would never progress, because there's no need to progress. There's no need to keep searching for that pursuit of excellence.
Because you've already reached the peak.
Yeah, because then I'll just sit back, have a Mai Tai, and not continue to grow. And so I feel like having a little bit of disappointment in my choices helped me get better and will continue to get better, and I will continue to try to reach for that excellence. I think never being completely satisfied is a helpful tool to continue your own growth and your own pursuit of excellence.
Yeah, I like it. Excellent answer.
Thank you. I've been thinking about it all night. I hope
No, it's great. It's great. It's been an excellent interview. You've had an excellent career, and I think I've missed my window in this life, but next life, I'm definitely coming back as a stuntman.
You can still do it. It's never too late, man. It's never too late.
Seriously, Colin, this has been just riveting. Thank you for spending the time with me and sharing all these great stories and what makes you succeed at the highest levels. Fantastic.
Well, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it, man. I've really enjoyed it.
Hey, thanks for listening. Okay, don't go yet, please. 2 favors. I ask simply 2 favors. One, if you could please download the iTunes app. You could do it on your phone. You can do it on the computer. Take 60 seconds and leave a review. It means a lot. 2, you can find my episodes on several social media sites, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Find the one that you like the most. Find the one where you tend to have a lot of friends and followers. And if you could please either share it in the case of Facebook and LinkedIn, or retweet it on Twitter. that would mean the world to me. So those are the two asks I have. I love putting together this podcast. I hope you enjoy listening to it. Thank you so much, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.